Well, welcome back, everyone. Today's lesson will be dealing with innovation. Now, we're going to be in a different textbook, and the textbook that I'm going to be using, I've put on the slide so that if you want to purchase it, you can. To save you money, I'm not going to require it, but I do expect you to keep up with the PowerPoints, and we'll probably deal with innovation specifically every Thursday, so that we can keep up and not get behind on anything. But do keep up with org development and change, because that's an important part of the course as well. But on Thursdays, we'll more than likely, like I said, just focus on innovation. Now, today, we're going to take a look at what creativity is, what innovation is, and some of the myths that are out there that involve creativity. So let's go ahead and begin and examine what it means to be a creative person.
Well, I came across the fact, this was back in 1994, that web usage, worldwide web usage, was growing at something like 2,300% a year. And that was sort of a wake-up call for me that there was something going on. And many people at that point hadn't heard of the web, they didn't have internet access. This was the time of 28 kilobit per second modems and dial-up access and so on and so on. So it's a very different age. But it was clear that there was going to be something there, and I realized you could make a bookstore on the web that could hold more books than a physical bookstore could ever hold. It could truly have universal selection. And of course, since then we've expanded that into other categories, and we keep pursuing that notion of Earth's biggest selection at Amazon. Well, my background was in computers, but books were the first best product to sell online. As a happy coincidence, I've always been a big reader, but that wasn't the reason that we chose books. My real passion was computers, and that's how I was involved in this world of the web back in '94. But books was a great first best product to sell online because books were very unique, and still are in one respect, and that is that there are more items in the book category than there are items in any other category. There are millions of books active and in print around the world. And the largest superstores, the largest physical book superstores, only carry about 100 to 150,000 of those millions of different books. So on the web, you could build something that solved a real problem, that people can't find some of these books that they want to find. They're very good books, but they may be very narrow, have a very narrow audience, and so we basically built Amazon to make it possible for people to find those hard-to-find books. Yeah, well, we had to build all of the software systems that did not only the front end, the website, the piece that's most visible to people, but also all of the back-end systems that interface with suppliers so that you can reorder items, and the systems that manage picking, packing, and shipping, the fulfillment part of the business. And all those things are very important. In fact, I'll tell you, when many of the .com companies went out of business, when the internet bubble burst, one of the reasons is they hadn't really put enough attention into their back end. They hadn't put enough attention into what I think some people consider the less glamorous part of the business, which is the picking, packing, and shipping. But we've done extensive analysis and found out that customers actually wanted to receive their products. Well, for me, I think it's very important to pursue your passions, and if you're doing that, the risks are often not as great as they seem to be. So for me, when I thought about leaving my job and starting this company, I knew there was a good chance that it wouldn't work. But I also knew that when I was 80 years old and thinking back over my life, I would never regret having tried and failed, but I might regret having never tried. And when I thought about it that way, it didn't actually seem like that big of a risk. I think it's the very rare idea that can be done by a single individual. Almost everything that is going to change the world, solve a problem, improve something, these are usually big efforts, and they require a team working together to really get something important done. And that has been the story of Amazon.com. At every step along the way, we've had a team here that is making this work. I mean, I don't know, even at the smallest scale, you have to figure out how to get help from your friends, from your family members, from people that you can hire in those early days. I think without that, it would never work. Well, I think probably our most important piece of intellectual property is our brand name. And I think people, and I think this is very important for anybody who's going to start a company or market an invention to understand, is that brands for companies are like reputations for people. And reputations are hard-earned and easily lost. So the most important intellectual property that a company can have is, for us, it's Amazon. It's that name, but what it stands for. And we've worked very hard to earn trust. You can't ask for trust. You just have to do it the hard way, one step at a time. You make a promise and then fulfill the promise. You say, we'll deliver this to you, tomorrow, and then you actually deliver it tomorrow. And if you do that over and over again, then ultimately you can instill your company's name with a reputation. And that's, I think, sometimes people talk about brands in this very amorphous way, but for me, I like to think of it as a person, and what is the reputation that that person has, and how have they earned that reputation? Well, we think fulfillment by Amazon is a very important business for Amazon.com. So by offering it to others, we have this fulfillment capacity. Let me back up and just say, we have these warehouses all over the world where we do our picking, packing, and shipping. And we've put a significant investment into making those things work extremely well, be able to deliver products very quickly, have the products close to customers so that you can get them to customers fast at acceptable cost. And that's a hard piece of infrastructure to build. It took us, over a decade to build that infrastructure at a very significant monetary cost. And one of the ways we can leverage that infrastructure is by offering it to others for a fee. And that's what fulfillment by Amazon is. So from our point of view, it's just good business. But from an inventor's point of view, or a startup company's point of view, or any small retailer's point of view, or even big retailers, it's an opportunity to use our infrastructure to provide better services to your customers. So we will literally do the picking, packing, and shipping for you and send those things to your customers, send those things to retail points of distribution for you, and allow you to focus on your idea instead of having to pay this, what really is an undifferentiated price of admission, that you would otherwise have to figure out how to do on your own. And it's very important when you're doing something new not to reinvent the wheel on stuff where you're not actually creating any new value. And so fulfillment by Amazon is really a great thing for small startup companies. It's completely self-service. So you can come and you don't have to negotiate a multi-year contract with us. You can use it as little or as much as you want. So that, I think, is very, basically just being a variable cost. It's not something where you have to pay a big upfront fee. You just use it as you need to use it. That's actually a very innovative change in the industry. The second thing is that we're very good at sorting items together. We're probably the best in the world. So if a customer buys more than one item and they're going to go in the same box, we're very, very good at that. A third thing is that we've actually opened it up to developers by these things called web services APIs. So if you're a software engineer, a programmer, you'll know what that is. But that's a way for people to embed into their own systems, again in a self-service way, basically treat our huge, 10 million plus square foot fulfillment center network as a giant computer peripheral. They can treat it like a printer and just command this big network of buildings to do things. So there are a bunch of innovations inside of our fulfillment centers, and we're able to do this very efficiently. Well, to me, true innovation is something that's not only an invention, but an improvement. And sometimes things, it's not easy to make things different. I mean, it's not difficult. It's not hard to make things different, but it is hard to make things different and better. Most of the solutions, most of the problems in the world already have solutions of one kind or another. All of those solutions can be improved upon. There's no chance that anything is perfected yet. I don't believe that. But all those solutions are highly evolved, and they've been, people have been working on solutions to most problems for a long time. But still, somebody, it wasn't that long ago, somebody figured out that you should add wheels to suitcases. Pretty good improvement.
Right.
Well, it's hard work. So it's easy to have ideas. It's very hard to turn an idea into a successful product. There are a lot of steps in between, and it takes persistence, relentlessness. So I always tell people who are, who think they want to be entrepreneurs, you need a combination of stubborn relentlessness and flexibility. And you have to know when to be which. And basically, you need to be stubborn on your vision, because otherwise it'll be too easy to give up. But you need to be very flexible on the details, because as you go along pursuing your vision, you'll find that some of your preconceptions were wrong, and you're going to need to be able to change those things. So I think taking an idea successfully all the way to the market and turning it into a real product that people care about and that really improves people's lives is a lot of hard work.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. And today we're going to shift gears to another book that talks about innovation and creativity. Now, I don't require you to have this book, but I am going to be using it, and the PowerPoints that you see in regards to innovation and creativity will come primarily from this textbook, and it is Managing Change, Creativity, and Innovation, 3rd edition by Patrick Dawson and Konstantin Andriopoulos. So again, I don't require it, but if you want to have the textbook to follow along with the PowerPoints, then please feel free to do so. But probably on Thursdays, I'm going to be looking at innovation more than change and development. This is just going to prevent you from having to buy 2 textbooks, which can be quite expensive. So the organizational development you need to stay on top of and continue to read and keep up with the PowerPoints for that. But when you are on Thursdays, you need to take a look at the PowerPoints and my lectures for innovation. Now, what is creativity? When we talk about creativity, we look at the process through which new and useful ideas are generated. Now, people who are the creators draw on resources, which could be knowledge. You may want to improve upon an item or an idea. You can use technology, and we're seeing technology being a catalyst for creativity, and it's growing. But you do it to engage in everyday problem solving. You can find alternative routes in response to traffic congestion information, and that's how maybe the warnings on GPS came about. But that would be an example of problem solving. You have probably engaged in creativity in solving some type of problem in your personal life. They say that necessity is the mother of invention. So you can think about maybe times when you've had a problem, you've needed to address that problem, and it's required you to think of maybe creating something or doing something differently or new to be able to solve that problem. So that's where we're looking at when it comes to, or what we're looking at when we come to creativity. Now, creativity is a unique human quality. There's no other animal out there that creates. It's originally seen as a eureka-type moment, and that comes from artists, and that's really not the case. You can develop over time new ideas and creative creations and so forth. But now, and as you see, it's recognized as something that can be developed and nurtured in the workplace. It stimulates thinking about old problems in new ways, challenges convention. It opens up different viewpoints, enable new patterns and links to emerge, creates opportunities for business initiatives. So just coming straight from the text and the PowerPoint, you see that a lot of what we create can be nurtured in the workplace. How much creativity goes on in the workplace? How many shortcuts have you created in your job? Or how many gadgets have you created to help improve or make your job easier? So this is all a part of creativity. You don't have to be some inventor in a lab creating things, inventing things. It can come just from everyday life and trying to figure out ways to make life a little bit easier for you. Now, there are myths that go along with creativity and its definition. The first is that the smarter you are, the more creative you are. Now, there are limits to this. Once an individual has enough intelligence to do their job, there's little or no correlation between the two. In other words, what we're talking about here, and you can read the rest of the PowerPoint, but once you have the basics of that job, you understand that job, everybody else, and including yourself, you're on an equal playing field. You have just as much opportunity and ability to create things and innovate things just as someone who may have a higher IQ. You're just thinking about things and you may think about it in different ways. So it's not necessarily something that comes from a genius. Now, the creator of Post-it notes, for instance, he was a fairly smart guy. He was an engineer, but he didn't sit around and all of a sudden, boom, one day, let's create a Post-it note. He wanted to leave a message for his supervisor, and when he got to the office, the supervisor was gone. So he took a piece of paper and a piece of tape and wrote a note and just taped the note to the wall or to the door. And voila, there's Post-it notes. He saw it and he said, I wonder if there would be a market for this. And boy, is there a market for it. But there was no eureka moment as far as him just sitting around and it coming to him. He saw that there was a need, and once he addressed that need, he saw the solution to that need might be something that other people could use. And then you see how Post-it notes have evolved. Creativity exists outside of time and circumstance. Some people believe that creativity is something magical or extraterrestrial. I'm not sure about all of that, but again, people do believe that special people are the only ones who can create, and that's not necessarily the truth. Creativity is a process that is an ongoing contextual dynamic. That means it's processed or processual in nature. It's linked to domains of knowledge that are similarly changing and in the process of becoming. So for me, let's say teaching a class, I've found ways to make this job simpler. I've learned to be able to glean from PowerPoint, to be able to present material for you. I've learned to use technology to be able to communicate these principles to you. So just in my job, over the years, I've been able to find shortcuts and ways of being able to decrease the amount of time and effort it takes to present a class to students. And you probably have done the same thing with your job. Creative people are risk takers or high rollers. Now, there is a certain amount of risk that you take. Much of it is calculated risk, which means that you're not just jumping out blindly. You do have some research under your belt. You have looked into it, but sometimes it's going to take you stepping out a little bit in faith to make sure that whatever it is you're creating will get out there. And you run the risk of it not being popular. There are all types of risk takers whose ideas and inventions and creative products have not made it. But think about all those who have. And really, when it comes to the workplace, anything that you can come up with to make your job easier is a success. Whether or not you can sell it in a marketplace is irrelevant, but we're always looking for ways of doing our job easier, and you creating those ways already makes you successful. The creative act is essentially effortless. It's complex. There's a process that begins with illumination, and most innovations occur after many trials, dead ends, and a lot of personal effort. So that's a falsehood. It's not effortless. You do have to put in a lot of effort. Edison, if you remember the old saying, and I'm sure you probably heard of it, there was no telling how many hundreds of attempts, maybe even 1,000 attempts, that Edison made to make the light bulb. He failed every one of them. But that one idea or that one attempt that was successful made sure that we had light today. So, and he said, it's not that I failed all these times, I just found ways of not doing it right. So that's a pretty good way of looking at efforts that have not produced fruit. Creativity derives only from eccentric personalities. And again, these are special people, Einsteins and things like that people have in their mind. It has nothing to do with the person, the personality, the behaviors that are specific to any type of person. It does arise from behaviors that take place in the workplace, and that's what we're looking at today. But even at home, you create things that help make your life easier. You have interest in things and you create from it. So there's all types of opportunities to be creative. Creativity exists in the arts, and it's a stereotype, but business, science, education, all of these disciplines incorporate creativity. So there's plenty of room out there for creative people and for creative innovations. And that's what we want to try to foster and learn more about in this course. Coming up with new ideas is the most difficult part of creativity. There are all types of techniques that can help you generate new ideas. And at the end of this, I believe there's some websites that can help you in being able to create things. But here we see that the difficult part of creativity is not simply to arrive at ideas that are new, but to identify those that have value and are realizable, which means they have some type of practical usage, and they're not so far-fetched or out of range that you can't reach them. So you want to try to come to the creative table with ideas that are have practical value to it. You can use it, but they are within your realm of expertise and ability to be able to bring it to fruition. Creativity output is always good. Novel ideas also can be applied to evil and destructive ends, just as well as they can be applied to good. It's just like a gun. A gun is neither good nor evil. It's how you use it that will determine the outcome and how it's viewed. So ideas can be used the same way. It can be used to hurt or to build up. That's the choices that we make, and there's a lot of good ideas that have been used for bad purposes. So creation or creating things is not necessarily always going to turn out for the good of mankind. Now here's a video and a couple of videos here on YouTube and the Accidental Creative, so I'll let you guys take a look at that, and we'll move on from there to next week. So until then, have a good weekend, and we'll see you later. Well, today we took a look at creativity, the definition of it, and we found that creativity is not something that comes about by special people at special times. Creativity involves those everyday people who are just trying to make life easier every day. And then we took a look at some of the myths, and hopefully that you know now that it's not special people or special circumstances that involves creativity. You'll be more sensitive to that. Well, next week we'll be in Chapter 2 of Org Development and Change, so make sure you keep up with your reading. And until then, have a good weekend, and God bless you.